And there
Hello.
we are.
There we are.
Yes. Today, again, one more time. What is the show count?
Number nine. Number nine. I'm counting. I'm keeping track. 'Cause I'm making the thumbnails, so I'm keeping track of the thumbnail count. This is our tech journey episode number nine. Number nine since the rebrand. It's our seventh episode this year, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. Adrian, how are you? How are you doing?
Good. I'm a little bit tired today. This is the reason why you will code and not me.
What happens if I'm tired too? Is no one coding? Somebody from the audience coding? Or he might have to do it hot too.
Yeah, possibly hot join. Then,
Hot join.
I let code, It's like CTO. I'm not doing it myself.
Oh no, of course not.
Good. So,
Hello, hello.
so at least we will do quite a big portion of the time
Put code on screen today.
coding, right? But first of all, we want a little bit of announcing things and talking about things, wrapping up things. We have several new people today. Very interesting today.
Mm-hmm. Hello.
Interestingly, Sharky. I don't know how to spell it correctly.
Sharky?
If it's T
Sharky?
Sharky, I don't know.
T Sharky, Saif, Isabel, Tuyan, hello. A lot of new faces. Vladi, hello. It's great to see you.
Good. So what are we going to do today? So in the last weeks, especially on the Wednesday stream, we have talked about modern web development. And to wrap this up a little bit, we were talking about React and Tailwind. And each time we were comparing it to the, let's say, vanilla world, like React versus vanilla JS. Or it was basically some kind of puppet thing, which could be like framework versus vanilla. And in Tailwind, it was quite the same. So it was basically atomic CSS versus, or utility first versus vanilla CSS. The reason why we've done that or picked that topic is to shed some light on this topic. And just yesterday, 2 days ago, I released a post about this where I tried to explain the professional opinion about that. Because what I see, and this was the reason I was pushing towards those topics, is that people tend to have their personal opinions. And personal opinions are the opinions coming out from the ego. They are actually amateur opinions, and we all have them. I have mine, everyone, and you can't get rid of that. So it's you always have something which comes out of yourself. This is your intrinsic motivation. You like things, you don't like things. You have that. This is basically there. So people tend on platforms like LinkedIn to say what they like to have. So it's when they pick, or let's say have favorites for tech stack, they tend to stick with things they know. And this is quite interesting when Dennis and me both are helping other teams as well. And when we're joining teams, or actually when I join teams, this is what I can report, is that we actually see that we have mixed teams, especially in the beginning phase when people pick their tech stack. It is not like, hey, you're getting 10 people together and you have just one opinion. It's you have 10 opinions there, sometimes even more when people don't really know about what to pick. And this is quite interesting. That's a very interesting situation. And this is what we see on LinkedIn. So people are not really trying to get to a higher level of abstraction to think in a professional sense about things. So take it how it comes. Take into consideration requirements, take into consideration context, what is the business idea, what is really good for us long term, and not so much what I personally like, It is what I personally like can change over time, but the requirements of my company are still the same. And we need to differentiate there. And the reasons why we picked those topics is to explain them more. It is not to show that React is the greatest framework or library out there, and you must use Tailwind. No, it's not. You misunderstood it last time. Okay, great.
Oh my god.
No. No.
Oh
It
no.
is like,
have I been learning the wrong framework?
I know you have already recommended it to your clients now. Okay, damn it. No. It's about understanding those things. It's about knowing those things.
With HTMX.
I don't really think that HTMX is a big topic, but yes,
There we
okay.
go. All right.
It is. This is the next big, let's say, differences in opinions. But yes, let's stick to it. So to wrap it up, it's about understanding those things, and
Yeah.
we should all understand more before we actually do something, pick something, talk about something, and all this kind of stuff. Because you can only speak about experience when you really experience something. Today I posted that you need to fail in a real world environment. You need to fail in a real example, in a real project, in order to understand the real consequence. And before you have done that, the iteration until you get successful, you cannot really say what are the pros and cons in this specific context. You can't even tell that, hey, I've done that once in my context, now I know every context. You don't know that. Every time we join new companies, new teams, it is basically every time like navigating and finding a connection to those people. They're different, entirely different to what you've seen beforehand. And this is what we need to understand. So we're talking about technologies. Those technologies have specific purposes. They are not Maslow's hammer. So Tailwind, for example, is not the best framework out there for CSS. Even my personal and my amateur opinion, I really like that. My professional opinion is think twice if you use it. It is exactly this. The details you can read in my blog, the blog post, and same with React. So I picked React. I'm happy with that. So I can talk about the experience, but I can talk about 15 years of not using React, using vanilla JS and vanilla CSS as well. So I can make a difference here. I can talk about. I've developed a professional opinion, and this professional opinion changed every year, actually, sometimes monthly. And this is because I need to,
I'm seeing this a lot with teams where, especially a team larger than, let's say, a team larger than a squad. So when a team is somewhere between 3 and 9 people, you'll often find that most of the technical decisions have been made from a strategic perspective, right? So somebody who is not actively coding has made decisions about how active coding looks like. Which means that even though the team is like 8 people, even they, given the choice, disagree with the tools that they are using. They're just happy with it. Somebody had to make a choice. It was a choice to be made, and it didn't happen to be their, you mentioned it early, their personal choice, their sort of ego choice, right? So it wasn't their happy place tool, whether that's a build tool, whether that's, Webpack versus Beat, whether that's Tailwind versus something else, whether that's using Redux or not using Redux, or using an alternative, or using Zustand, or using something a little bit more modern, or something a little bit more classical, right? It's almost like having different styles of music, and you simply somebody has to decide, okay, this is going to be a smooth jazz band, or somebody has to have creative direction. It doesn't have to be unanimous, but it also doesn't have to be dominated by one person's opinion. But it isn't very homogeneous. There are conflicting opinions for different reasons in most teams, and the reason I'm mentioning this is that if you find yourself in a situation where you are being asked to evaluate a tool, it is very natural to say, I will negatively grade anything I'm not good at, or I have tried before I didn't like. And you're biased, personally biased, to positively grade anything that you are good at, or have experience with, or are very passionate to try. And those kinds of decision-making matrices generally don't come up with favorable outcomes, because really you need to decide, does this decision even make sense? Shouldn't we just go with the thing we're most experienced with? That's choice A. Or B, let's choose the thing that is the best tool for the job, even if nobody on our team has experience with it. And then simply accept the fact that this is going to be a long-term decision, and we need to build experience with it no matter what, right? So the really big breakaway point is, for example, I see this often in PHP teams where it's completely, they can do it vanilla, but they have been using a framework for a long time. So every new project, every new microservice by default uses that framework,
Yeah.
which is completely unnecessary. Yeah, same thing with Kotlin teams. I don't see this as, ironically, I don't see this as often with Go and Rust teams because the ecosystem is a bit younger.
Mhm.
But I see this driven to the extreme with C# developers, with teams in the .NET ecosystem, because their choice of framework might be heavily already
Yeah.
heavily incentivized by the Microsoft ecosystem, where depending on what runs in Azure, what doesn't run in Azure, what's being actively promoted, what's sort of being actively developed. So you see all kinds of different nuances and even forcing functions and incentive structures built into the ecosystem you're using. If you're on Node.js, you're definitely, you know, time to install, to do PNPM or bun or npm install, time to install might actually be a heavy decision for you. If you're in the any other ecosystem, you might want to favor a setup where you have a boilerplate already ready. React is notorious for these kinds of decisions, that plugins and add-ons to the framework are not so much being chosen because they are a good fit for the job, but because somebody used a template to set up the project and it just happened to be included in the template, right? So people are sort of making decisions based on what templates they have available and what templates they have at hand, not so much how, or yarn, yes, exactly, or which kind of compilation target to use for ESM modules or classical modules, CommonJS modules, right? So it all comes down to understanding and being aware of your own biases. And in a way, it's also interesting because Adrian and I are now essentially having a fake problem, right? So this is not exactly a kata, it's closer to a simulation, right? So we are trying to demonstrate usage of a tool, but obviously that is quite biased because we are lacking a concrete business problem, right? So we have to keep that in the back of our heads. It's like, hey, this is lacking a concrete
Our
business problem.
context is a little bit shallow, right?
And our context is shallow, exactly. So I'll be making perhaps investing a lot of time in thought about something that you would consider silly if you're actually working on it for a project. And there were some things that we'd actually invest little time in that might be really important for your project, more security oriented or tooling oriented.
It is really about those key points today, how it feels like to develop in such a stack, just in a very narrow scope. Don't take it too seriously. Don't ask questions. For example, the boilerplate we use is Next 14, but still uses page router. So those little things, just because we never updated it. It's an older version, just updated in versions. So don't mind that. For example, it is not meant to be like the best practice ever, so on. But it's about especially that Dennis is not a front-end person per se, which is quite interesting that a non-front-end person is using those tools, and you can take a look and watch it and take a look. Basically, you can even give, provide feedback.
I feel being called out.
Exactly. And if you provide feedback long enough, we will pull you into the show today, and then you can do that stuff together with us.
To be fair, I have 20 years of experience. Front end doesn't scare me, right? So it's just sort of my personal choice to not focus too much on. I still focus on craftsmanship on the front end. A lot of my clients are front end engineers. It's just that I don't have, let's say, a driving sort of self-incentivized drive or passion for solving technical craftsmanship related problems on front end. That means I'm still front end adjacent. It's not like I don't. It's not like I don't know what React is.
Raul said, "Hello, Raul. By the way, every company
Raul.
client is different. Is a different world. Sorry, they all have completely different cultures, tech stack preferences, and mindsets. Some are 1,000% top-down decision making, while others are willing to discuss and develop better approaches. The latter kind of companies are minimal amount." Yeah, actually, this is the same as I experienced it in other companies. So Dennis just mentioned that people who started to use a specific language or framework a way to do tend to use it even if it's considered to be deprecated already. I see that often with Angular teams. You know, they see clearly that Angular is not the top tier framework. Maybe you can consider it still a top tier framework, but it is not like when you take a look at state of JS for long-term decision making, it might not be the first choice if you would start a greenfield project anymore. Let's put it like this. But the teams I see in that regard don't even consider the move away.
Yes, but now,
know?
it's easy to have the discussion in a bubble, and it's completely different to have this discussion with a team that has been using Angular for 7 years.
Exactly.
Right. So if I put a team lead of a company that has been using Angular for more than 5 years, they will be of a completely different opinion, and they will be right for their context. Right. It will make perfect sense in their context. I have clients often where they're using not the latest version of their stack, right? Where I might be working with a Ruby client or a PHP client, and they are not on PHP 8.2.3, or sorry, 8.2.8 or 8.3 or 8.31, or I'm not even up to date on 8.1. Right? So it's completely plausible that they're on older versions of the stack, which means that they're on older versions of the framework, which means that they're using plugins and tools that are compatible with slightly older versions of the ecosystem. Plus, there might be conscious decisions why that's the case. You know, maybe they have decided to use a more hardened LTS version of the ecosystem, not the latest one. React, for example, is a very, very stark innovator in that regard, in that they don't have old stable versions. It is recommended to use the latest one. Right? There isn't use this archaic version of React from 2 years ago because that's the most battle tested one. It's simply not that kind of framework. You know, it is a framework that very much lives on continuous improvement, and it incentivizes you continuously updating, which is why the ecosystem is so fragmented. Because you might use a framework that was developed 2 years ago where there was a completely different paradigm on what the recommended React practice was, or whether I remember a time of React when JSX was not around, where JSX was clumsy to compile, and a lot of teams didn't have the boilerplate set up with Webpack properly. There were a lot of human errors involved with setting up that kind of compilation, and they were just writing typical old school React code. Create element, putting the HTML into strings, and then using string concatenation to actually create the DOM objects inside the components. That has been considered archaic because JSX was adopted so well due to its positive impact on developer experience. And that's for the most part why React is so popular, because the developer experience it brings with bringing the HTML and the DOM elements and the JavaScript bindings to that and the CSS closer into one singular file.
Yeah, we discussed it in the last show, how important the positioning is. So the distance between the things. The more you clutter things, into different files, into different things, it is especially in the front end where you have so many moving parts. Where there's a little bit of business logic, there's a little bit of view, everything is moving around, and then you have CSS still. You need to style that on the fly while you're doing business logic. This is what I often see, especially younger generations developers prefer to have everything in one place, while older generation developers like me, I'm an old generation developer, but I don't prefer that, so I need to correct that. Because of the past, we learned it differently. So everything was separated when we started, doing front end in the past. And I see this is one of the interesting topics, and actually one of the base topics of today's coding session. This is to display this. It is this reduced distance to basically zero when it comes to styling with Tailwind. And in React, you have that in one component, the idea of having your hooks and your JSX representation plus Tailwind in the very same component, and not as cluttered as, for example, styled components are, but there's still a distance. And distance, the reason why distance is so bad, let's say higher distance, is because it costs us processing power, our brain. We are, after 4 hours, 5 hours of development, we're getting, stressed, fatigued
It's
because
extra
of that.
cyclomatic complexity.
It
Like
is.
the cyclomatic complexity is also being contributed by the amount of files you need to have open. And we just discussed this with, I have it closed. I won't remember it now. But we discussed this with a few influencers on LinkedIn this week that I made a short video on regarding how to organize and structure your code, especially when it comes to things like prop drilling in React. Prop drilling is a symptom of having hotspots of cyclomatic complexity, right? So, but the issue isn't that prop drilling is bad and you should always avoid it, or the adverse of it is in the sense that, oh no, prop drilling is okay, so let's just prop drill as much as possible because we can't avoid it anyway, so why bother?
We should be
None of
clear.
those-
We're
none
not
of those
talking about using props. We're talking about using props over multiple levels in a scope.
Yes. So the issue with prop drilling is that so when it comes to cyclomatic complexity really talks about how many different pathways a certain function has in order to execute. But you also have the complexity of your coupling, your connaissance, essentially, right? And if you look at let's say a circle, and if you create dots on the circle, and then if you ask yourself the question, okay, if I have a dot on the circle on a little plane, and I connect every dot with every other dot, how many connections does each dot create? And you'll find that it is a number that grows very quickly with the number of dots that are on the circle, right? So the number of connections, the number of different ways that you can couple modules together is much greater than the number of modules in the system, right? So a system that has 2 modules has one coupling configuration. If your system has 3 modules, then you have already 3 configurations. If your system and then there's the optional ones, which is everything's isolated and it's like a weird kind of anti-scenario. But that's not the point. The point is that once you get to 10, 100, 1,000 modules, the number of connections, the number of different configurations that you can have to couple them together with each other, like way out, it goes into the millions. And that's what prop drilling exposes, is that there are way too many ways to connect things together. So what we want to figure out is how do we, A, minimize the amount of connections we have, and B, how do we dilute the number of connections across our entire stack that we own.
Yep.
Right? So we don't own the framework. We don't own the library. We might own the configuration, but that can already hide certain things. It's never a good thing to say, oh, my code is completely decoupled, but then you have a dependency injection config that has 1,000 lines of code, and you can't really do anything without loading that up. And that's also an anti-pattern. Like, you didn't actually decouple anything because you have been, you've moved one hotspot to another hotspot. And prop drilling is that hotspot. It creates hotspots in your system where rather than managing the coupling and diluting it across your stack and creating cohesive units, you actually create such small modules. Now you have to drag them around your entire tree.
The audience is throwing comments at us. We need to handle.
Let's handle comments.
Right. Exactly. So we have one comment. Most of them don't have the time to test the entire application. Tests are not their first-class citizens. I'm pretty sure that is one topic before that.
Yeah, that has to do with using old versions of libraries, old versions of... and Mohammed has the same comment. Mentioned, I saw a tweet, is it still a tweet? If it's X, I don't know. I saw a tweet in which a CEO said, I am making almost 62,000 with an old code base of pure PHP and jQuery. Yeah, and those websites exist. If it's solving a problem, it might be pure PHP and jQuery. That's sort of in the WordPress era of the web. It's completely possible that you have a stable business and there's no reason to invest into...
Yeah, this is the legacy topic again. So legacy systems aren't bad systems because as long as they are legacy systems, they still earn money, right? It is the point is...
There is a perception of value. That's what it means to be legacy, right? So otherwise it would be abandonware.
So you need to make the thought, like, when I switch from one tech stack to another, do
Mm-hmm.
I have benefits from it? So first of all, when we're talking about PHP, it's by no means a obsolete tech stack anyway. Even
Mm-hmm.
Symfony or something like that, it's still a valid tech stack. So there
Mm-hmm.
are other options, more trendy, more modern options, but trendy
Aha.
is a bad word. We shouldn't use that.
Trendy.
So there are other, let's say, more used, more wide, that where let's say things with larger ecosystems, more interest,
Mm-hmm.
and we have that especially, for example, in the area of modern web apps. Next week we have progressive web apps as topic on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
There is so much new stuff where you don't want to have a full stack approach with PHP anymore. You want to have that in a dedicated app. May it be
Mm-hmm.
NextJS, may it be vanilla, I don't know, but it should be dedicated for that purpose. Otherwise, you will have other problems. So I understand what we see here as a comment currently, but
Mm-hmm.
this is then basically, let's say the goals are not set high. So if you
Mm-hmm.
have a business and you want to grow with your business, and I had that decision 5 years ago when I came from a full stack PHP C sharp to the decision making process to a new stack which is totally based on Node.js based frameworks. I basically had those things. So how can I find developers? I had a hard time finding developers back then for that specific stuff, and it was very easy to find new developers. And that alone already, when we take the business level, is actually one of those things we should consider. So we always should consider strategic layer, tactical layer, and operational layer. And this is what
Mm-hmm.
people refer to money. When it comes to money, they normally mean the strategic layer, the business layer, and that's
Yeah.
true. Those are, in the end, most of the times the people who have the last say. Otherwise, you have another conflict, but we're drifting away. So maybe we're going a little bit into the next one. Tech stacks are driving the industry to the level that jobs specs are specific to frameworks or languages, not general engineering. Yes, React developers, for example. People
Mm-hmm.
call themselves React developers because why? They're using JSX instead of HTML. This makes them still a front-end developer using JavaScript, HTML, and CSS in the end. So for me, they are
Mm-hmm.
simply they should call themselves front-end developers, or better, what I
Mm-hmm.
personally prefer, front-end engineers, because we should all have a engineering mindset and not a developer mindset.
But
This
it
is my
is
personal opinion
it
about that.
is following the trends, especially the ones that Abinoda is reporting on, especially on the overlap between developer well-being and developer experience. I just noticed he posted an analysis of a white paper that goes through a couple case studies regarding developer experience having a positive impact on productivity. I think the industry is sort of developers in general and the jobs themselves, they try to grasp as much sort of filtration or selection into the hiring process as early as possible. Right. So what
Yep.
do I mean by this? I mean, if developer experience is going to be crucial for you to be able to sort of retain your sanity working in front end, then you might want to filter out, okay, I am a front end engineer, but I want to focus on companies that use this tool, that use this kind of tool, or that kind of tool, or this kind of technique, or that kind of technique. And that's what it means when we say, oh, we're looking for a React developer. We're looking for a full stack engineer using React. You're looking for a full stack engineer for this and that and this and that. But the really important part is that you should be on the lookout for job descriptions if you're looking for a new job. You should be lookout on the job descriptions where the job description says, "Oh, a few years of experience with React, Angular, or equivalent." So that's what you're really aiming for. You're aiming for a position where they understand that it doesn't matter what you used before. It's okay if you're an Angular developer. If you're being hired long term, then if I expose you to a React stack, and you won't actively, for egotistical reasons, you won't fight it, then if you drop that level of resistance, or if you can work with the stack, even though you understand your resistance, then there's no difference between you and a fully fledged React developer. Because the key part here is that you might be faster in how you type and how you compose problems together with React if you've done it before, but there is no evidence that you would be extremely more productive. At the end of the day, it's going to be human problems. It's going to be conversation problems. It's going to be business understanding problems. And your level of understanding of how good your fingers can use the framework have no measurable, demonstrable positive impact on the overall productivity of the engineering organization
Yeah.
in the context of it pursuing business goals.
We had that. We had that in the past. That there were competition between two teams, and it was like who can type faster. There was a programming tool. I can't remember. So you can basically type the challenge, and then you get your time and score. And one team was very fast, and actually the team with the most problems in general. So it was fast in typing, but it was very
Slow in
bad in
thinking.
engineering. And let's go through the comments because we are quite late.
Yeah,
So
let's go.
who makes decisions based on service like state of JS? It's shooting yourself in the foot. Yes, of course, if you take that as your
Yeah, you're
context.
giving your power away. Yeah, you're giving
It
your
is,
power away.
but you should take a look at them. It's
Yeah.
like you shouldn't like ignore those. And that the point
It
about
has
this,
valuable data.
exactly, you need to take a look at diverse things. You need to take a look at the DevOps state of DevOps report. You need to take, as Dennis said, people like Abinoda. They have oftentimes, let's say, white papers. You need to have a broad variety of things. But what's very important in state of JS is how easy it is for you to find people in a specific area when you take a look at the interest. So this is actually one of those points, but this is definitely not the entire context. So next question. Yeah.
I love the
one?
Twitch emojis. I like that. I love.
It's
I love
interesting that they actually
seniority.
pass through to here.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I wanted to comment. Like they went out of their way to make sure the Twitch emojis render on.
So props drilling is not bagged. Sometimes adding global context instead of it will add more complexity. We must avoid it. That's extreme versus extreme. That's bad comparison. You should think in modules and components. We are in a component-driven thing. So never think in global and never think in the different thing, the contrary to that. Always think in what you can do best in the middle ground.
Because you can build things declaratively with native React. Let's say pure components, right? You can declaratively create a component that's considered pure, and all the state is outside, but the state has to go somewhere, right? So there is a boundary where cohesion stops, and you have to decide, okay, where do I put my state? And if the boundary includes 4 or 5 submodules, 4 or 5 different, I don't know, top level elements or React components, or React components that have like a container of some kind. You have to decide where does the data go. Like at what point do you want the React components not to communicate horizontally? Because ideally, cohesion, what it allows you to do is you can say, well, I want them to know about each other on a local level. So I want them to communicate with each other. So that there is some element of global inside this bubble. But I don't want to use a global for that.
Yeah,
because that's the problem with Angular. People don't like Angular for that reason.
You have that as well with
everything by default.
Sorry, yeah. You have the same problem with React. Like they implemented the form context, and that's actually quite global as well. And it's actually quite bad. So we implemented it once and removed it quite quickly. So if you want to use state management, it's always good to use something like Recoil, Zustand, or even Redux if necessary. It's a little bit too complex for actually what it is. It's like a battleship if you want to go in a lake. But having those kind of things where you really have, let's say you have an organism in form of a component, and there you have a state. This is, in my experience, the best way to do state management, where you really can avoid prop drilling and all this kind of stuff and still have a good balance between coupling and cohesion. But let's go ahead. Trucky has another comment. Does the complexity also increase because I implement everything in one language, React and React server components? Does it make it easier in your head if the frontend and backend use different technologies, context exchange? So I think there is a tendency these days again to go back to backend for front-end architectures. I'm careful about that because people misunderstand backend for front-end architectures. It is more like you have a backend which is specific serving the front-end, but this is not the backend of your application. And I think that it can be an interesting part for your strategic decision making or tactical and strategic area to have just one language. But in reality, you don't really move developers from backend to frontend. So that would be the full stack approach, which isn't that common anymore. You don't find that many people who are able to work full stack like a PWA, building a real web app, and in the next moment doing caching, message queuing, Kafka, and infrastructure on the other side. That's a little bit too much for a single person these days to know, which it can add that you only have JavaScript. It can make it easier, in my opinion, but it's not a must. And what you shouldn't do is connect those contexts where they shouldn't be connected. So because you have JavaScript on one side, JavaScript on the other side, doesn't really mean that you should start to connect it inside a monorepository. Those two things should still be disconnected, so you keep the quality of substitutability, which is somehow not widely known, but it's basically the essence why microservices were invented and micro frontends were invented. It is to keep things separated, separation of concerns.
A good example. I haven't used React Server Components on a real project, and I'm not really interested in it.
Yeah, but this is backend for front-end architecture. We need to be distinctive.
I'm using it as an example, right? Because in PHP, for example, we often from backend frameworks like Symfony or Laravel, we often end up at this situation of the backend we're building is actually an API, but there's an element of the front end that is generated by the backend, right? So some kind of templating engine that creates the payload that will host the application. There is an element of it that is not pure JavaScript, that is being controlled by, let's say, PHP or the framework or Symfony or some kind of React form equivalent or some kind of integration of React and Symfony or React and Laravel. There are many overlaps there. And the issue is that when your form, let's say you submit a form, let's keep it really simple. When you submit a form and you're not handling that form submit request as you would with a third-party SDK, where you parse the form and you generate a payload object in JSON or something equivalent, and then send it to the server, and then asynchronously wait for a request. But instead, you're actually submitting the form in a typical HTTP, HTML sense, and then you're expecting something to intercept it and hydrate whatever comes back, even if that thing that comes back is something partially rendered, like a server-side rendered component, or something served HTMX, and you actually need to squeeze it into an inner HTML of one of your components, and then rehydrate JavaScript around it. Right? So the real issue is not, does it touch your API? The issue is there a backend for frontend element layer in front of your API that has to translate, oh, my input fields have names, they have name equals yada yada, but my API doesn't care about that. My API expects, it's gRPC. It expects a JSON payload. So obviously I can't submit a form like that. There needs to be some level of translation. And there have been various opinions of this in that translation should then happen, in the traditional frameworks, translation has been happening when the request arrives and then translated locally on the backend. So there was a backend and a backend, and that's it. There was a service layer of the backend, and there was a rendering layer of the backend. But with frameworks like React, when you're having something like, the T3 stack, NextJS, Nuxt.js, Vue.js, the part of the JavaScript that executes on Node.js on the server, on the server side, so away from the user's machine, that code is still essentially front-end code. It's just being distributed across two machines. The same way as you might have serverless edge functions, it's not happening on the user's machine anymore, but it also isn't on the machine where the central state is. The central state is where the API lives. But maybe your React component, maybe your next project doesn't actually have an API internally. It doesn't have any state. It is just a backend for a framework, a front end, and it will communicate with a third-party API or federated API or have GraphQL in the background. right? So we need to be really careful when we talk about that. These are not two projects. It's just moving part of the compute rather than using web workers or WebAssembly. We are moving it simply to a Node.js server that happens to be co-located somewhere in our request infrastructure.
Yep.
But that doesn't make it backend. It just
No.
doesn't live on the user's front-end machine directly.
This is
Right?
more
That's what-
comparable to the gem stacks, which
Yes,
became
yes,
popular in the last
yes.
years
And
for
Cloudflare
smaller
has
applications.
edge
So
functions. Yeah.
right. So you have small applications, the serverless idea, start quickly, developer front end developer focused or centric development practices. But when it comes to let's say more sophisticated architectures, we're really thinking about backend scalability, huge scalability. Then this kind of pattern quickly gets to the point where it becomes complicated, and especially when you have multi-platform things, when you want to create clients, you want to distribute the clients, you can't really have those server-side components anymore. So they are not a de facto standard. They are just a possible architecture, and it's just a trendy thing because of Next 14 just introduced it again. So we should go to the next topic, but just as
We should actually go to the code examples because people are here for live coding, and we've been walking on for almost an hour.
There are so many interesting comments to talk about.
There are many interesting comments. Yes, thank you so much for being active. Thank you so much. Don't think that we don't appreciate.
But maybe most of the context are let's say comments are just like last thing. Engineering versus development. This is just a response. Yes, but the point is, we have so many shows already in the past, and every time we were talking about the problems, we always came to the conclusion that it is because people tend to be just not thinking about what they're doing. And this is oftentimes a problem. And this is based on the idea of, I'm a developer, I'm just starting to do something. It develops over time. And this is the false assumption of what agile actually is. And engineering, it is like, or people think, oh, this is the waterfall approach, everything planning up front. No, if you have your local requirements right now for a specific task to do, you think before you actually execute what you want to do with that task. What is the outcome? What do you want to bring to a test in a real environment? And then you walk towards then you basically publish it, deploy it, get feedback, and iterate with the same process again. Think about it, reiterate, go on. And this is engineering.
And let me show you something in this context. That there's a website. There's a website called You Might Not Need jQuery. Now, for those of you who are old enough to remember jQuery, it didn't used to be such a lovely place to code in. It used to be quite a jungle. And jQuery was basically this universal shim of craftsmanship on front end sucks, JavaScript sucks, tooling sucks. So here's jQuery, a sort of desperate attempt to create some kind of common language. But it was created for an ecosystem, in the post IE8 era, which was 20 years ago now.
That was the era we don't talk about anymore.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about
They don't even mention that era.
Right?
Those wasted lifetime, right?
and the point is that the framework is still around. Now, if you call yourself a jQuery front-end developer, right, as you used to 15 years ago, 10 years ago, then you might have been used to writing code like this. The issue is, nowadays, you can also write this. Right? This is modern JavaScript, no framework JavaScript. Now, the point is, 10 years ago, when that person started to learn jQuery, or 15 years ago, this didn't exist. Right? So this, on the right side, nothing existed. This was not part of the JavaScript standard. Right? And with how quickly the ecosystem is changing, there are now things, especially with HTMX coming around, and don't let people fool you, HTMX is still a JavaScript framework. There's nothing, it's not some magical web component framework. It's still JavaScript, right? So the point is, HTMX is in the left camp, and React is in the left camp, and Angular is in the React camp. We use these frameworks because the native standards do not possess that level of developer experience or capability or just tooling support. And it was created and maintained for the reason that We want to write code that is similar to the one on the left side. And don't be fooled. This isn't something naive jQuery did. Because jQuery did it for the first time and they invested a lot of effort into creating something like this, these APIs were created, standardized, based on how jQuery implemented them. So they were the innovator that have set an example for the standards body to adopt it into common usage into all browsers.
Yeah.
And we see that as well with React. Certain React features are getting standardized into modern browser APIs. That's the point. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't be using React once that is standardized, but you should be aware that the more years pass since you started learning whatever framework you prefer, the more the good stuff from it that was fashionable, that was popular, made it into the standard stack of your browser.
But I want to respond quickly before we go to the code. It is like we talking about the same story, like Prototype.js, jQuery, later on XJS, MooTools, so many tools were out
Stores in Angular.
It was never the case that vanilla actually surpassed those again. It is always like vanilla is adapting to those, and in my opinion, it will stay like this. And it's totally fine. It is like the evolution of the web. So we will always surf on those frameworks. And, vanilla is just, following after. It becomes better and better. We see Mark van Neven with the approach to create a pure PWA with just web standards, just web components, basic standards you can. There's no TypeScript. There's nothing in it. So basically, no, there's nothing in it. I saw it already. I had a chance to see it already, and it is you come very far already with just using vanilla technologies. This will be another topic for us, but I would say we're going to coding now.
Let's go. You want me to? Did you make any changes to the repo? Because I'm still where we left off last week.
Sorry, Dara. I don't know why I'm hurting you, but you will tell me later, I think. So. Just a repository. I would say we just start where we have finished some days ago. Actually, last Wednesday.
Last Monday, yes.
So we are pretty badly prepared for this, to be honest, because we want to have like a jamming session where we basically work on something. What we have here is a NextJS 14 stack with React 18, Tailwind, TypeScript, ESLint, Airbnb settings. Prettier we have inside there as well. We have Tailwind sorting, so it will sort the class names. We have some regulations there, I think, like having at maximum 120 characters per line, I think, just for testing purposes today. And we have a form of very simple monorepository setup, which doesn't really make sense for today, but it is for the future because this repository will be public. Probably after the show, I will send the link, and we will use that every show when we do coding. We're using that repository with different tech stacks and simulations inside there as well. So today, last time we started with a notification component. So it was about having a list element with different forms of children. And the idea was to display how different forms of children actually being handled in components. So on which point shall we create new components in order that it looks good with Tailwind? Because Tailwind does have some flaws when it comes to horizontal space in your IDE. And especially an upper ceiling of complexity. If you don't set yourself a upper ceiling of complexity, which means you start to create an artwork out of every element, you will have a problem with Tailwind. If this is your requirement, you have a problem. So you should try to avoid every style instead of adding those because you feel like an artist at the moment. So those are two things we want to go over today. Just jamming a little bit. I'm happy. So I will take a look at the comments while Dennis is doing the work. I'm drinking tea a little bit, and we will just go over it, and it will be some form of pair programming, so not by definition, and we just start now. So the idea is to have a list with two. It was a notification list with, what was it? I can't remember.
You tell me. So we're playing good cop and bad cop here. I'm on your side here, audience, because I'm the non-front end developer. So I will make a lot of mistakes. So Adrian is the one who's getting frustrated by how naive I am about where I want to put
No,
my
I'm not
process.
frustrated. All good, all good. And if it is someone in the audience really have that feeling that he needs to join, or he or she needs to join, feel free to do that. It is okay to have hot joins. We give you a link. You can come on.
Yeah, do we have the link for the repo? Did we share the link with the repo?
Not yet. Is it public? Is it? Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not sure because I think you added me as a maintainer, so I know I have access to it.
Need to take a look.
Yeah, just if you're inviting them. What was the
settings?
Run command?
It is public, I think.
It is.
Yeah, wait. I just send it out so people can take a look at it.
Okay.
Where it is? There it is, and come on, there it is.
It's over there. Yeah, LTJ Playground. Did you build it with Git flow, branching strategy?
No.
Adrian, but I have a develop branch.
Actually, it should be deleted.
I just noticed, yes. But it made it into my code base, so I set it up. Okay, we're not hating on
We need to remove it.
now. We're hating on Git flow on every other episode. Let's focus.
Actually, a develop branch is not Git flow. A develop branch, as long as this branch is merged every day into main, you still are on the continuous delivery requirements. Okay. If you are, like, say, seen a little bit flexible, right?
Okay.
Okay, so let's go. We want to create a list with notifications inside, and the notification was about having different components. We can have a component which is just a text component, or a component which might contains icons or buttons even.
Where do you want me to start?
There we have ended last time. Where it was?
Wait, hang on. I'm not running from. Is it run dev? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Let me open this up. It's 1990, right? Okay. There we go. Okay.
Muhammad, I will take a look after the show. It wasn't actually meant to be posted during the show, so probably take a look for the branches. It's currently having a develop branch, which isn't supposed to have. It should have.
The browser is empty. Okay, so it's not public. So I have access to it because you gave me access, but
yeah.
Okay.
Let's do this after the show because you concentrate on that one, and I will post it right on 6 p.m. right about. Okay, so what we have here, as I said in the beginning, is basically a boilerplate I'm using for quite a while now. So it's not like the one you install at the moment when getting NextJS. This is a upgraded one. So in the source folder, so you have the pages router, which is that one, and we have the components, which is that one. I think we have. Please go to the pages. I can't really remember where we have stopped. I think
we stopped with the Tailwind demo.
Tailwind demo, right? There we are. So last time you have just started to create this typo type headline element where you placed inside your basically a common headline element and removed already. And the idea was to remove unnecessary styling out of the Tailwind demo component. A very simple step. Yeah.
And that was a very naive interpretation, let's say, from my side, because I was immediately wanting to sort of optimize, am I writing this? Am I taking advantage of CSS, of the power of CSS if I'm styling with HTML? I think that was the main critique that we sort of wanted to explore. Because if I end up copy pasting this around, I'm not doing anybody any favors by keeping this here and sort of keeping it duplicated and outside of my CSS file. If there's a CSS file, and this project has one, right? So created by Tailwind. Where do you want to take the
So I would say the next step, I just give you orders. So this is basically a command approach. So you execute and you can ask questions how you solve it, but you need to find yourself.
I would much rather we pair program. So I'm typing and
okay, no good. Let's do this.
Because otherwise, I don't.
Okay.
Otherwise, we have to do way too much context exchange.
Okay.
And I would much
So
rather
the next step,
you explain
the
more
next
code.
step would be first of all to show it. Do we have a chance to switch between browser
No,
and not?
I won't. I don't have my desktop set up. I have way too much personal stuff in the background on my desktop
Okay.
background to easily show it in the browser. So what we do
Okay.
have in the browser is, wait, can I share two screens? No, I can't share two screens. I'm afraid not. I don't. I'm not
Okay,
set up.
let's go with the code type then. So the next step would be to work on the actual list. So what we have here at the moment is a page,
This one?
which means we are on a very high level component, which means that we need to go deeper now into the code, which means that let's say a cluttered component like this would not really work, because as soon as we add logic, we need to move this markup into a component. This is the latest moment you should do this.
Okay.
So all you hear from me now is just my experience telling you today. Feel free to criticize that. I'm always open to that. So learning. And so we need to transform this, move that part which you have selected now into a new component. And we need to take a look now.
Can I do that with my editor? You know, if you're practicing craftsmanship skills as well, does WebStorm have extract React component? I don't think it does, right?
No, but I personally use templates for this. Just in the IntelliJ IDE, I have just my templates for this.
So I used convert to class component, and that's not what I wanted to do.
No, it's not what
but
you Everything with class you don't want to have here in that context. So you just go to the File Explorer, go into the Components section. And this is one of those things, it's not really defined in a React way where to put the components. Yes. This is oftentimes a question. So what I prefer to do is
notifications.
It's a little bit too generic for my taste, because you could have multiple. So you have two messages. You've subscribed to make a user message. Let's say user notifications. Create a folder called user notifications with exactly starting with a lower, so a non-capital letter, because it's not a component. It's a group. It's an organism or molecule, and inside there you have your components. Hooks,
I was wondering whether you would call me out on that. That's very good. That's very good.
So this is one way of doing that. This is not the atomic. Like sorting everything in atoms, molecules, organisms. I hate that. It's not working in large projects.
It creates too flat folder hierarchies, and then
it is hard to reverse engineer, and this type is quite easy to reverse engineer as long as you stay with some domain language where everyone knows those are user notifications and not I don't know, client messages or something like that. Use one term for one thing. And this is the user notifications. Inside there, we have a major component which we can call like that. So user notifications. Some tend to use it wrapper. I wouldn't do that because it's nonsense to do that. So just create a new component, which is a TSX file, not a TS file.
Sorry.
You want to interpret JSX?
That's me being a backend developer, and I just hit enter on the...
Exactly. And now we need to create a new component. My problem is I'm so used to use templates that it might make sense that you actually copy it from a headline, for example.
Yeah, I was just about to do that.
No, this is a page. This is a page. Don't copy that one.
Sorry. Yeah. So I'm copying
that is good. This is a larger example where we have even interfaces, so we are all in TypeScript right here. So it make little sense if you would exactly. It is actually quite large, so people can read it. It's for people without glasses at the moment.
But I think 120 characters is slightly off screen right now, especially with my minimap.
That's large letters right now. But
anyway. This is type size.
Extreme large,
22.
right?
Extreme large. And we're not in a headline. We're in user notification.
So first of all, for everyone who's listening today, what we have here is some form of we have the interface up there. So some do it inline, just in the props, to reduce the amount of code. We found out over time with diverse teams that we actually have more readability, adding those lines and having a clear distinction of what's going on, especially when you reuse a component and you want to know about those props or prepare those props as aggregates or something like that. It might make sense, for example, in line 3 to export the interface then, which can come quite handy. And this is not really Yagni. So you can call it Yagni, like you ain't gonna need it. Why do you actually do that? It is a very easy way to read that file, especially when you have 1,000 components in a project, which is
and just
something.
for those of you in the audience who are backend engineers or more backend savvy like myself, the reason we have to do this is because we are using TSX, not just JSX. So the component we're exporting is type safe, meaning that when we use the component, there is a type safety check on the type of component which has been made generic by this type, right? So we are actually returning what does FC stand for again?
A functional component.
Functional component, yeah. So we're returning a type of functional component, but the function it receives, it's also type checked. So it will have, to avoid it being typed as any or any array or any that can contain any, we're actually giving it a generic to say this generic will define what kind of props and what kind of children this function accepts and how it affects the return type of its return value. Right, so that's why we're doing this, because we're using TypeScript and JSX at the same time. And I'm sure for you, a lot of you front-end developers, but I just said it's completely unnecessary, and yeah, I've probably said something wrong. But really, the important aspect that we're focusing here is that the type safety will help us have better autocomplete functionality from our IDE. Even if we end up sharing these components with some other team, we have different folders here. This is a quite simple example, but we might be forced to navigate. At a certain point, the components will become so granular that I won't be able to type anything plausible without using my autocomplete from my IDE to fill out all the props.
Exactly.
We have a comment
We have
already.
several.
Yeah. Does wearing glasses increase tech employability by any factor? Yes. But I'm not
If
sure
you don't wear glasses, you don't join my team, right?
It definitely does, but I'm not sure if it's a negative or a positive factor. It's definitely a factor.
So I would say if you have problems with your view and you don't wear a glass, you will have problems to join the team because you don't see anything. This is what I can go to that.
Yeah. So if you're writing React code, especially if it's like a really complex component, and you're typing it like this, and you make a lot of errors, then glasses will definitely increase your chances of getting hired.
You should find your problem. Okay, so we already have some other comments like this one. I'm not getting the reconnector isn't supposed to use a file structure as a router. So the second part of the comment.
What does that mean?
This is what it is.
Explain to me like I'm 5. I don't actually understand.
Please open the file browser of the project. I quickly explain it. So we have the pages here. The pages is an evolutionary thing of NextJS, and it's not state of the art anymore. This is what I said at the beginning. I still need to rebuild this on some point. So today we have the app router.
This is the backend for frontend, right? And it has a handler that I'm assuming this is a fake handler for passing down, simulating some kind of federated request.
Now, this is actually an Express thing. So it's basically built-in Express for the backend side, and you can just put it in the API. But this is the API folder. It is not supposed to use the pages folder anymore. Instead, we have an app router, which does include way more functionality, especially when it comes to server-side middlewares and all this kind of stuff. This pages doesn't really implement that. We will fix this. We will update this. Today, we still have the page router in it. It is not the topic for today. We want to focus on the Tailwind part. So let's do it like this. Let's get back to the component, please. So we keep on doing. In the component, we can remove props with children, actually, the extension of the interface. because we don't have children and we don't have children. So we want to have, normally we would go for a TDD approach. We don't do that today either because we don't have time for this.
Yeah, I was about to ask that because I would have been interested in that, but
We can do that in the next TDD session, apply that
Yeah.
to front end, which is way more complicated in my opinion than applying it to normal, let's say, backend functions or classes methods.
I'm assuming this won't be iHeadline. This would be iUser notifications.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So we have another comment which was interesting as well, maybe to notice. You can call the file index as well. This is simply not how I'm using it, or my teams or the teams I work with using it, but it's definitely possible.
Yeah.
to
So
do
if
it
you
like
if
that.
you use index, then when you're importing it, right? So
Right.
the name of the folder will pass as the default catch, so you don't have to type.
It was a little bit
the-
easier the way
Yeah.
we see it right now is a little bit was easier for autocompleter to create automatic imports because
I
index
don't
files
like
often had
using-
problems.
I don't like index.ts exactly for that reason that you just noticed, that you just mentioned, because if I end up refactoring this at this level where my cursor is right now, then if I end up refactoring this to something else, then
Yeah.
it will be very hard to follow. Is it coming from that? Is it coming from that component exactly, or is it an alias in the config, in TS config, or is it an index.ts file coming from that folder? And this is actually a component, and then you have to differentiate.
It is clearer,
Is
right?
this an index.ts being exported in the parent folder but not capitalized properly, or is it a lowercase index.ts in the child folder? I hate doing auto indexes like that. That is very practical for smaller projects, but I come from the era where developers ended up abusing index.php and the index.html with htaccess routing in Apache, and then doing similar things with sort of default project structures, and it just ends up creating a mess. You have a
Yeah.
component, give it a name, ensure that it has only one canonical name, even if it takes longer to type. That
It is
would be my
very
recommendation.
important, right?
When you hit Control Space, the IDE should only pick up one of it, right? Because if I type import something and I'm importing from index, then I now need to wait for the dropdown to appear, and then I need to target the right subfolder in the dropdown, which I don't enjoy using my IDE like that.
And we have another comment here, like you can use types instead of interface at this place. I want to, yes, it's first of all, it's possible. I prefer, maybe it's because I'm coming from the prototype JS era. For me, a object or a JSON object is an interface. It is like, it has several things. It can be very deep, and the type is not meant to be deep, even if you can use it for. It's like more you have an interface with several types in it. This is the way I learned it in the past. So maybe this is the reason why we find it here. Technically, it's possible to use types.
I mean, you could also do something like this. You could also do default props equals list equals array, and this is a string array.
Right. This is the inline definition, right?
Yes, and then you can say that type un equals type of default props, right? You could even use this kind of type definition in TypeScript, right? So you can say, I'm never going to write the type definition. I'm just going to define, let's say, for testing purposes or something else, I'm going to define my default props, and I'm going to pass them in as a default. And then I'm going to infer the type and export the type so that it
but
always
as soon
matches
as you
the
have
default
union types, it becomes
Yes, as soon as
not
you
very
have
good.
union types or any kind of like optional things or nullable optional things, which are even worse, it immediately becomes a problem, right? Because what you really want to highlight is how the semantics of the type makes sense, not so much what the structure is. So again, different strategies for different use cases, but it's a very good comment.
Good. Great. Let's try to get to the point where we actually apply Tailwind.
Okay.
So I would say we start again with the UL, so unordered list. So the idea is now to have a wrapping element. And this wrapping element does contain list things. So we try to stay semantic correctly today. So if anyone
what does that mean, semantically correct?
It does mean that we respect how let's say, HTML is supposed to be
Rather
used.
than using a div and then div.
Yeah, especially in the Tailwind area, people, or
Mm-hmm.
it was not, it was before Tailwind already as well, people were understanding div as a, let's say, generic element if they don't want
generic
to.
container. Yeah.
It was a
Like,
lazy way of
yeah.
applying it. So,
It's
for example,
basically
when we
this.
think of a
Yeah.
PWA
fragment.
already, you know, a PWA is an app, like a native app, just readable by Google and or any kind of search engine. So as soon as you stay semantic correct, it's easier for search engine to pass your code and make a good assumption, or get a good idea of what you actually mean by that. And the other thing is accessibility and those kind of things. The ease is the more you stay with the standards, even in React, though it's basically still HTML and Tailwind is still CSS. The closer you stay to those semantic standards, the easier it is to get, let's say, accessibility gratifications and or grades you actually need to have in when you work with for larger companies. They actually want to have the certification for this, and you won't get it if you have everywhere diffs. It's simply not possible.
Wait, hang on. Mohammed has a great comment. Mohammed mentions we always use interface and destructure the props. I think this is a better approach. Something like this. Interface I props, image I gallery image, on submit file any. So that's a type of the callback. On dismiss, that's another type for the callback, for the event handlers, and then aspect number, optional.
Yeah. So it's actually what we going to do as well, right?
Const image proper model is
okay.
then this, and then he inlines the destructured prop, I believe. Yes, and then type hints it and says this is what we have here. And that's my type, and it's empty right now. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mohammed. What's next? Do you want me to destructure the loop?
So first of all, we should just start to define something, and let's create a flex column element, and then I can tell something about that. So in line 6, the unordered list, add a class name tag to it. Remove the braces, right? You don't need them.
Yeah, why is that happening?
Because it's JSX, and JSX is supposed to take JavaScript, and
it doesn't like that I'm tailwinding and I'm actually statically typing them.
The point is you can do it like string concatenation as well. So you can use template strings inside here, and then you need those braces, because a template string needs to be evaluated and a normal string doesn't. Everything which needs to be evaluated does need curly braces. And this is the reason, actually. So primitives like, actually no, only the string is actually something which doesn't need to be evaluated. Right. Okay. So let's start with, there is sometimes people add a relative here just to normalize the positioning, which I prefer as well in the very first object inside some kind of a module-like component-like area. So then we have flex by itself, and another one is flex-col. Exactly. And since
now this is where the black magic happens for me, because you are now dictating to me from memory, and I will remember it based on where we ended up using it. So I will remember relative flex and flex col.
I can't remember which influencer, which content creator it was on LinkedIn. He said some days ago that starting, no, it wasn't. It was Theo. It was Theo on YouTube. He said that when he got into Tailwind, the first time he really got had fun with Tailwind when was having a good cheat sheet. It's not using the documentation; it's using the cheat sheet. I had the very same myself, so maybe I find it still. Wait a second. Tailwind cheat. Do I have still? Yeah, I have it still. I will post it.
Nice.
My old cheat sheet. There it is. This and the other one. We have so many comment blocks.
Oh, okay, okay. That's great.
One.
Nerdcave.com, Tailwind.
I started with that years ago, I think, and that helps you quite a lot to get the idea. The cheat sheet is good if you know CSS already. So you have the assumption you need
That was going
something.
to be
How do I do that in Tailwind?
that was
And
going to be my
and
question.
always
Yeah.
try to get, because we already have quite a long class name now. This is one of those caveats of Tailwind.
Yes.
So we try to get that as close as short as possible. Now we're coming to the point where we ask ourselves: do we already need to define the vertical gap between those elements? Probably we need to, but not right now. Maybe we don't need to do it. So Yagni, we ain't gonna need it. Don't put it inside.
Yagni, sir, Yagni. I made a mistake. I took what was inside the page, the Tailwind demo,
Yeah.
but I didn't add our component yet. So when I'm refreshing in my browser, I'm not actually seeing what we're doing here.
Yeah, you need to. Of course, you need to put in the user notifications component inside there now.
Okay, would you do it like this? Or would you add anything? Would you self-close it like this? What would you do?
Self-close it, of course. Yeah.
Self-close
I
it,
think
okay.
even the Airbnb linter rule set does force it anyway. And it's basically a good standard I would follow. So now get back to the thing.
Yeah, I'm hitting Command B on the component, and I'm hoping the editor will follow my lead. It works. Okay.
Good. Good. So we have now very basic, and this is the upper ceiling of complexity. Try to keep it as simple as possible. You will add later. You will have some form of dark mode and other things, but keep it as simple as possible. Of course, most of the time you have some kind of Figma file, Adobe XD or something tossing, which was tossed to you, and you need to follow that, but still try to hit the quality and not over-engineer or overdo here. So let's go to the next one. So we're now coming to the point. We have prepared that in the last session. We see you have two messages from Adrian. This is just a very simple form of notification. It's just a list element.
So are we already thinking in the sense that this is something simple?
You can't do that, by the way.
I know, but I'm sort of commenting on my editor. Like, are we talking about creating subtypes of notification?
Right, exactly. So we need to we need to think ahead. What do we want to build here? So we need to have we can have different components, type of components listed inside here. And we need to map those and some kind of switch case thing where we implement that. And the other way around is to create one notification item which carries more options. So we can modify it to the need we have. I personally prefer to have it like, it's a little bit like dry principle thingy, that I have only one component which does contain more options. I saw other teams which say, I want to keep my component as close as short as possible, and then I have in this component a mapper which maps, based on what is the type of notifications and places another component. You choose the approach now.
So you're talking about a context where the difference is, do I want to have a generic but then have a complex prop object, a state object being passed down to it, or do I want to have a creational pattern and actually the magic happens in the factory, or do I want to keep it completely anemic by forcing myself at usage to inject the children HTML tags or the inner HTML, right? So that's the choices that you're recommended.
Yeah.
Is there a default recommendation that you would follow?
I personally, so it's just my personal, if I would just sitting here going for programming, I would basically create one list element component which contains some interfaced property, a main property, which is basically the options of those. Let's say it is it contains the main children is always the label. I don't have a specific label prop. I just take children. It's way easier to have.
I'm happy following your lead.
Exactly. I did a natural refactor, and then we have
I'm special. I don't want to talk about what we could code. I just want to code it. Right? So I'm happy following your lead.
So create a new component which is called user notification.
So a singular. Mind if I do it right here?
What are you saying?
No.
Only one component per file. So this is actually a
I see.
linter rule which is implemented anyway. Don't use it. Don't do that. Because as soon as they grow, first of all, you tend to mix those things, coupling. And the second thing is it's just too large. You want to have small components. You always want to have.
How much of a problem is it if I do that? Like, how much does it bother you if I do this?
Personally, right, so I just saw how the problem is components grow. And when you have large projects, and I mean really large projects, so things with building time of around 8 to 10 minutes for the front-end application, those kind of things. You have so many components, and they get basically vertically very large, and you have a lot of business complexity in those things, and you try to keep that as simple as possible. One concern per file and not several concerns, because on some point you tend to share resources. What other people do as well, for example, is to put this element as a sub-element into user notifications, as for example a result of a callback, a result of a use memo. So I wouldn't recommend this
so it would
as
be
well.
Inside here, and this would never be exported. But then
the
when
problem
you need
is
it's a huge problem, and then you'd have
if it's only about one line of code, okay, maybe. But as soon as it does have an own life cycle, it's way too much. So you start to mix things you should mix.
Because I've actually checked the linter, and this what we just did isn't against the linter. It's against the linter if I export it. Right, so it says only one exported component per file. It doesn't say that I can't define the component. Right?
You should. Okay, then we forgot the linter rule. Actually, it should only be one component.
Okay. Now I didn't know whether that was intentional or not, right? Because doing TDD, because I'm more of a sort of looking at it from like a puristic sort of TDD standpoint. I would much rather do it in this file, so that I can use my IDE to move it to a new file.
Leave it in this file, and we take a look and refactor later, right? So you can do that as long as you refactor afterwards.
Good. Okay. That would have been my approach, right? Because if I have to go and navigate the file structure and right-click and create a folder and right-click and create a file, there's something wrong with my process. That's how I'm thinking about it.
And now you already made a little mistake. It's maybe. You can argue if it's a mistake or not, but you need to put the new user notification before the user notifications, and that's already weird because you have an element which is lower or deeper.
Because I'm defining the callback using const, not using the function declaration, because these are hoisted and these are not hoisted. Right, so that's already a problem. That's why that linter rule exists. But I wanted to get it on screen to highlight this difference, right? Because so what you're saying is that in order for me to now use this and say I'm gonna leave the other two in there, and I'm just gonna add this here. Now, why does this work? You said it has to be above it
has to be above. This is what I wanted to say completely, is that you should do that, because actually it should make a warning now, because it's not defined. It's basically not defined before it actually was. So it was used before its declaration. That's something you should always avoid, in my opinion. So since it does work, it probably will compile, but in my opinion, it's not best practice. And it's not best practice to have that in the same file. But let's just go on with that stuff and get this thing done. In my opinion, we should refactor that in the beginning.
I'm going against your intuition on purpose, just to highlight all of those little decisions that you would have done automatically that are not obvious to me.
I have way more problems with the size of the components. So yet right now you haven't put one line of business logic inside there. You have no states. You have no hooks. You have nothing inside there at the moment.
It works. Right? Yeah, this compiles. So I think the compiler is helping us, actually. The compiler is doing something in the background to actually make this safe. So your recommendation is right-click, refactor, move.
Yeah, but maybe you keep that in one file. Maybe it's easier now and refactor in the end. So
yes,
just
because I'm also
because
thinking about our viewers. You know, is it gonna make it easier to keep it all on the one screen? I have
just go ahead. Let's create this component now.
Okay.
So
I'm refactoring. I move the component. Boom, done. And I need to do this, and I
there
need to have this.
exactly, and there we need to now define something. So some people go and have multiple props. So what we've learned, so React components are functions. What have we learned about functions? How many props does a function should have? 0 in best cases. The next best thing is 1, and the second best thing is 2, but never 3. So if you have 3, you have another problem with your
Another prop,
architecture.
and then you have an object. Some of them
Exactly,
might be optional.
and in this case, it's probably enough to just have one thing. And the other thing is you always have children, which is a hidden prop actually as well, because you have something to pass to the object, and you need that. No. Sorry, we are
I know, but the
notification.
linter. I know, but we're not there yet. The linter that didn't automatically.
Okay, just go ahead. Okay, then let's define new interface. What do we need? We need a type, a union type or an enum. So let's stick with a union type. It's easier because we're running out of time a little bit.
Where?
In the single one. Please refactor it and call it user notification item, please. It is. Nice. I thought it to myself.
The type or the component.
The component itself, and keep the things in line, right? The thing why I call this item now, this is personal preference, is it's easier to make a difference between those two. Everything in my head is always about, because maybe I'm getting old, I don't know. I try to reduce mental capacity, which is necessary to actually process. It's easier for me to differentiate now those two things.
Would you call it just item and then import it as user notification item and then an alias in the usage?
No, I wouldn't do that.
You wouldn't do that.
As soon as you have 2 items in the browser open, in the IDE open, you start to have other problems with processing that stuff again.
You're optimizing for clarity, even if it makes
readability. Always readability.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Because I'm a more the team lead type of person, so I'm trying always to have it as easy as possible, with a low level of let's say.
So I can just look at it on the top of the toolbar, and I know exactly which one it is.
What's going on?
Because otherwise, if you use that index.ts suggestion that we had in chat earlier, then I have index.ts, 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 and then I can't use my editor anymore because I don't know which file is which.
Right.
Okay. So
again, personal preference. We just talk about how we do those things.
Yes, and that's all fine and good, because there is a lot of natural sort of decision making happening here that is very native to you. That is very sort of muscle memory for you. That isn't obvious for somebody who is not actively pairing with you. We have some questions. Have some suggestions. Muhammad mentions it seems that you don't have the Tailwind CSS plugin. So it's actually me typing. Adrian is programming. Dennis is behind the keyboard.
Sure. You need a plugin. I forgot. Right.
Okay. I didn't know that. So thank you for that suggestion. We should probably put that into the notes for the project.
Yeah. That's very important.
Okay.
You're
thanks.
welcome.
Having a hard time with Tailwind. Nice. Isabel, a new name. Okay, so we have a new person joining the stream. Sabale in VS Code, there's a nice extension to Tailwind CSS IntelliSense.
Right. Sorry, we've totally forgot that this is a untouched Tailwind browser IDE so far, right?
Yes, I don't. So I have nothing installed. So I'm glad that we actually highlighted. Hey,
it's working with that.
If you're using this project with IntelliJ or VS Code, it might make
sense. I tell you
install.
the utility classes anyway, so you don't need it right now.
Yeah.
But if you would work, you definitely need it, right?
Now, I am getting syntax highlights, so you can't see it, but I am getting a drop down that has suggestions. It's just that the drop down is not type safe. If I make a mistake, it won't alert me, but it does give me some blase recommendations that you can't see, unfortunately, because I'm sharing only the editor and it doesn't share the.
Come on, let's go ahead.
Let's go ahead. You're getting impatient. Okay, what do you want to do? Do you want to make this dynamic? Do you want
exactly. So we need to implement the children's first, so that we can finally get to the
Do you
This
want
is
it to
the first
be
thing.
children?
It's children, and now you need to destruct the props. I prefer to do that between line 5 and 6 and destruct that.
Okay.
I learned that as the best. It was part of the linter rule, so I just adopted that and found out it was really good to do that like this.
Okay, did I not
It's good clarity.
Okay.
But you need to extend it again with props with children, the interface up there. This is new in the newer version of React, actually. It was, I think, React 18 or something, 17, I don't know. One of those both. And now you have it again. So we have that. You need to refactor that now in the user notifications to add the children again.
Okay. That's my daughter having the zoomies outside right outside my door.
You have 2 new messages from Adrian or something like that.
Actually, I have it still in my browser. No, I think I lost it. Yeah. Okay. You have 2 new messages
Exactly.
from Adrian. I can check this stuff.
Exactly. So we have this, and now you go to the wrapper one. You delete. No, you copy paste. You cut out the more complicated one. Go back to the other one.
Yeah.
You cut out line 10 it entirely into your save. Exactly, and delete 9. And then you duplicate that one.
This one. Okay, hang on. Let me keep my clipboard. So I want to duplicate.
And there we have already another decision we need to make. It's we already have another decision to make, which is we had a button inside there, which is this H type. So what we could do now is saying, let's keep it loose. I know teams who are really appreciating this loose idea of things. And there are others, like you tell the user notification item that it can have a button with an href, with a function, like a function call, and a target, for example, for the href. Or you can just keep it like that. It does have pros and cons in the same moment. So when you have that as a definition of the item, then it's clear for everyone what you can do and what you are supposed to do, which is a contract between teams and developers. If you have nothing inside there, you hopefully have something like that. And that's the main difference. It is not about code or which is better to code. It's all about team dynamics in this case.
So would you say this component right now is anemic because I'm sort of giving you a little bit too much control?
Exactly. So I would tend, if it would be my code base in a production level, and I know in the next years developers are switching, you have fluctuations there. It does make sense to have, for example, here you did describe 2, which is a little bit. This is complicated because we should have something different. You should have something like you need to describe to something, full stop. Then you have a button, like a generic button, which is always the same, but it's an actionable button with a type of color, action, and which is actually the href. And we need to make a decision now in which way we want to go. So I would say we're going to add that, in my opinion. We said we should. So let's go back into the item. And we're adding now something to the interface, which is a new prop, which is an optional, so a nullable prop. I would call it like, let's simply call it action. Just call it like that.
So, I already don't like where this is going. Okay, but let's continue. Yeah.
Okay, and then you make a question mark. Action is basically not necessary, and it's not a string. It's not a string. We need to create. So you could do that now in line, so just define the next braces and define it inside there. Let's do it.
Want it to be a function?
No, it's not a function. It is curly braces.
Okay.
Right.
But what is it?
That's a mistake, right? And then this is I was on a wrong track. Call it please action button. That was the prop is action button, not action. Okay. And then we're going to have, we still stay with the core example. An href is a string.
Inside.
It's
Okay.
non-nullable. It's a string, and it's a nullable target string.
So you're basically decomposing the HTML spec into a prop. But do we need
Yes,
to
in
do
this
this?
case.
Is this project specific?
This is how I do that. So if someone knows a better way, go ahead. We will display it as a comment.
Okay.
What we have now is we have defined a very simple low-level aspect of how we could define an action button. So when I do that, we often have on-click events or stuff like that as well to have you can basically open, for example, a modal or jump to the next page or something like that. So more flexibility. This is enough for this one now. And now we need to implement this. So we have the children and we have the li element. And inside those, we need to now create an optional button, which is only rendering when we have action button defined. This is a conditional render in React. This is different to when we've done that in jQuery back then, or prototype, where we basically display none those things. So we basically, they were rendered but hidden. And this is
So
now different.
I can
Right.
deconstruct it,
Right?
and then there will be an if statement here of some kind.
No, it is inside the li element.
Oh, I hate when you inline things like that. So where do you want to put it?
I would say after the children.
Okay.
So you open curly braces after the children, and you make a simple thing like action button inside curly braces, and end. No, not dot. No, sorry, space.
Yeah.
And end.
I hate
And then-
inline if statements like this.
You
Okay,
will
but-
hate JSX then. So basically, then we just the a thing of the other. What I told you to copy beforehand.
Okay, but I would like you to express what you mean. This.
This.
You want the HTML of the button,
Yeah, exactly.
including the inner HTML?
Yeah, maybe I forgot that one in the props, but we need to add that.
Yeah, because
yes,
it's
yes,
not in
do
the
that.
props.
Yeah, we
Okay,
need to add that in the prop.
So I need that to be, so it's children. And what is it?
You could now use React nodes. You could JSX.elements, but I think it's deprecated as far as I
think it is.
remember.
I think it is.
And you
So
need
should
to
I call
use
it-
React
should I make
dot. You need to use.
Should I make it a string?
Make it a string. It's actually better to have that more normalized.
Okay.
You can use it, but then it's React node.
I know,
actually.
I know, but that's exactly what I want, right? Because,
Yeah.
to what level of degree is our precision as a craftsman actually hindering us from making progress? 'Cause
Okay,
that's also
let's go.
what I want to highlight.
Okay, then edit now at the.
Okay. So this is going to be what? So if action button is defined, then I want the HTML not to be outside here. I want this action button to be part of.
He was quicker than we were.
Okay. Oh, he spotted our.
Yeah, he's spotting everything we do.
And
so
I
we
like
are
the
observed.
wording, and I like the word he used, label. So
Yeah, it's
if it
true,
is
right.
defined, then this is going to be the element. And I'm assuming this is the label.
This is the label, and then you add the href in curly braces this time, and the target. And the target we need to add differently, but I will show that in a second.
Okay. The href.
Curly braces. No, curly. Yeah, curly braces, right? And then action. No.
href.
Yeah. You can do that like that, right? So you could, destruct that again, but in this case, it's more simple and still easy to read. Yeah.
I'm not going to destruct it because they are optional. So I don't want to destruct it.
Yeah.
What I'm destructing from is optional.
That's actually a very good point.
Because
So
that's-
let's keep
right,
it like that.
Because if we're inlining, then everything that is being destructed.
So,
has to
so
be
what we
captured
see
as-
here, because some people may not use TypeScript, the reason why we can do this, even if action button href is a non-optional thing, but action button is, and because we have action button and end is already basically
statement that
is
acts as a
sanitized
block.
by the compiler,
this-
right?
This is called a type guard. So after this statement, everything on the right of it, we have actually checked for the question mark. And since we have checked for the question mark, inside here, this part, so between this and the last curly brace, this is no longer an optional action button, but it's actually just an action button because we have checked for nullability. You could also do this. You could also do this, then have an else, right? And then in the else, you'll notice that this is not valid. Here, it's invalid. You can see it's red because in the else statement, action button is null, and it's not a valid usage.
I hate to see ternaries in JSX, but
you hate ternaries, but you don't hate the short form if. Like you have a very peculiar style.
It is all in JSX. It's all about readability. You don't have. You should not, in my opinion, you should not have business logic in JSX. You should extract it in the upper level where business action belong in the area where you have hooks. So then it's okay to use it. Okay, now at the target. This is the more interesting part.
Okay, hang on. Right now, this doesn't render for me in the browser. So from the perspective of TDD, let's say I want to see what's happening on the screen.
I want to see as well.
Yeah, I have lost.
So maybe run your formatter because Prettier is not running.
Prettier is not running.
No,
really.
Run format manually.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it right now. Sorry, you can't see my.
It is not supposed. Okay. Yeah, that looks better.
Yeah, already. It's not running. Actually, it is running.
But not on save, right?
Yeah, not on save. But that's what's missing. Yeah. Okay, so let me. Okay, now it's working. Ooh, actually. Okay, it's working now.
Good. So add target now. The prop target, and then we are done with the button.
Okay. How do I do that?
Target, and then you have curly braces again, and then you need to do it like that one, but you should get an error. Because it's actually nullable, but you don't get an error. I don't understand that. Is linter running?
Error. It is, but the point is, this will just be converted to null. But the problem is, I don't want this element if this is null. So that's a problem.
I have that with the same linter setup that you actually need to alternate that to undefined. That's a specific point I wanted to point it out. So interestingly, it's working. Let's take a look. Is it building? That's interesting for me. I'm learning now something.
It is building. I'm seeing it. I have it open on my screen, so I'm following a sort of live action. I mean, we did lose the prop.
So no,
right. So I would like to add it now, right? So how do we add the prop into the?
Yeah, just here, right?
Action button. Okay. I don't know. You can't see those suggestions right now. You can't see.
Okay, and here's the point. You would this is now ugly if you want to just have a markup, right? If you would just create a website and do it all manually, it might make no sense. You need to have a programmatic approach for this in order to make sense. So we need to start to map something now.
Exactly. So it doesn't make sense to now do this inline, but I only have one element. So I might cheat and say, let's define it. So the subscribe notification.
Yeah, this is what I mean. This is actually what I mean. Yeah.
Is what? What is this action? What does it need? Href. I forgot what it was.
What I do, we could do just a mock. So maybe create a mock. You can do that in the same folder file just for testing purposes. It would be good for TDD, for example, or a fixture. Don't know.
I don't want you giving me options. I want you to tell me exactly what the code, because I want you to make decisions.
Then please go into the components folder of user notifications. Add a new folder inside there called mocks. Add a mock file. Let's say mock.
TSX. Is it going to be?
You can for example use user notifications.mock.ts, for example.
Okay. And what do you want in here?
That's actually a good point as well. You can, instead of using undefined, you could say self as well. Undefined in JSX just doesn't render target at all. So it always it comes out to the same. But this is actually something which is interesting to mention as well.
Now what are we doing? Because
we create inside the mock and remove the X from the file name because it's not supposed to contain JSX code.
Okay. That I did ask you. So
Okay.
you? Okay.
Exactly. So, and this file, it's not a copy, it's not a React, it's just the exported const with the interface. So we need to have the interface of the other file. And this is basically an array of those user notification items, actually.
Let's look at this. It's an array, and it's a what?
And it's typed as a user notification item, user notification item. And I think we need to export it now.
I think we didn't export it, yes.
It is not exported yet.
Yes. So I will export it.
And this is why I like that approach, right?
And it's not the right type, right? Because I didn't name it correctly.
No, okay. Item, right? Correct. Okay.
Yeah. Right. So now I noticed that the prop is not correct. And then if I go here, I now have it and I insert it.
Exactly. And if you would have now
for those of you who don't know, I am using the syntax highlight and the autocorrect from my editor, which you can't see pop up on my screen, unfortunately. Right. So now it's telling me, yeah.
And now you should use your AI, of course, to fill out because we don't have time, right?
I mean, I don't like using that, but we can have. Now, what I am seeing is that
for mocks, it's totally fine to use AI. This is a chore.
It's a chore.
It is a chore to create mocks.
Next time you can create the mocks, and we don't have to do this manually. Hang on. So it's a user notification, and each one is what? An object. It's an object, right? So each one of these is one of these.
Exactly.
And then they have an action button, and this is also an object. And then this one has. Right. No, it doesn't.
What?
It has children, so it will have JSX. So now you need to tell me what you're doing, because you led me down a rabbit hole, and you told me it's not JSX. But the problem is
it's true.
We have not defined the stringable.
Let's make it a JSX file. Let's do it. Okay. I'm normally not allowing JSX in those children, so probably this is the reason why I get.
Because this is children, and it's a bit weird. It's a bit weird that we're doing this now, right?
Right. Okay.
Right.
It's not really weird because it's a mock, but
to me this is weird. To me this is too much information, right? So this to me looks like private information. I shouldn't have to know that. I shouldn't have to know the structure of this item.
It's true. So maybe we can refactor always, but let's keep on doing that. So
but right now I've broken the system, and actually we are moving this to a mock file, particularly only to get to this example, which has an action button, right? So we're doing it because of this one. What was it? Is it?
But it's a little bit more than that. So we already have different approaches there inside we can test. So if you would have tests, we could already test against it.
I am testing on my screen because I have it open. I'm sorry if you are sort of robbed of this experience. Okay.
Good.
Is that what you wanted?
Yes, it is. Is it rendering correct? Is there another?
No.
I can't really see what's going on in your ID on the right-hand side.
I think it's this the problem.
Yeah.
Now it's good, and now I need to use it. So now rather than me faking it here, I'm saying
you put it inside where it is actually.
So I'm using 3 items .map, and I'm saying for each item I want user notification item. Help me out, like this, right?
Can you?
Yeah, I can.
It's a little bit ugly, to be honest. So I personally I don't do that in. So first of all, what you're doing now is against React. So you basically
Why?
Because you're re-rendering that every time, which is actually consuming stuff. If you do it like that, you should have a callback or a memo.
Yeah, right. You have to memorize to not re-render.
So, or you do that directly into the JSX, which I personally prefer, because why do you actually need to have business logic if it's just markup? There is no logic inside there.
Could you explain the differentiation?
I don't expect to have much of logic here. So which means we're just mapping it. So as long as it's such a primitive approach, just put it inside where the view is. So it's just
So
the
here.
extension of the view. It doesn't make any differences. So you don't make, let's say, specific distinctions because of the index of the array or something like that. So I prefer to put that directly into the markup.
Okay, what does that mean?
That does
what do you
mean
want me
that
to do?
visible notifications, remove that. And instead of visible notifications, you put 3 items map inside as you just did that there.
So right click, refactor, inline.
Yeah, exactly. And then
My ID can do it. Like I don't have to do it manually.
so there is a problem with the linter because you don't get a key. So the linter is not running. Can't be at the moment because you wouldn't get now a problem with the key. There's a key missing.
This compiles. So
then we need to take a look at the boilerplate.
Okay.
So it's definitely, I don't know. Let's take a look later. So you need to have a key.
It doesn't render.
So
where do you want me to put?
do you build or do you lint?
It builds, but obviously we haven't passed on anything, right? We've just built a naive element.
Okay, I don't. Maybe I understand something different from building. Okay,
I haven't used the item. What do you want me to do with the item?
The point is, if you have a map in React, you need to have keys. You need to have because React does need it. So in order to re-render the map, it does need to know which element was in which order with which key in order to
it won't re-render if the keys don't change.
Right. So sometimes it's easy to just have just the index, but it's not best practice if you can avoid it. Like if you have, for example, user with a user ID. What do you say?
That's an optimization.
That's an optimization. Just put index now as a second parameter.
Hang on. I'm sort of as your pair programming partner. I'm now objecting to this because on my screen, this has stopped rendering. Because we haven't gotten it back to the green state. So if we're making a performance optimization, I would like it to.
This is not a performance optimization. This is to get it rendering.
Okay.
So key is definitely something you need to have in React.
Okay. What do you want me to do with the key?
No, it's not a key. You can. It's actually index at this point. So let's call it index. It's more correctly at this point. Okay. Exactly. And then you add a new property, which is always there because it's a React component. It's called key.
Yes.
And you add it like, you make a template string now, or just a concatenation as you wish. It's not indexed. It's not okay to do it like that because it's a global index of the entire app. So you need to have a prefix which says user notification dash index or
so you
item
want it to
be
globally
right, exactly. And then you need to add curly braces. And you need to have a $sign because it's a templating string. It's not correct at the moment.
It is correct. Oh no, it's not correct. Right, yeah, right. Where does $sign go?
Before the index curly brace.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
Exactly. So now we have a clear distinction, and now you need to add the item children as we've done that to the children part. We should refactor that. That was really not.
I agree. Yeah.
But we will refactor that. So add that as a variable. At the moment, it's a literal string.
Thank you for catching that.
And put in children instead. No, sorry. Item dot children.
See, that's the part that we should have refactored already because we already saw that that's going to be a problem just based on how our mocks look. Right, so this already shows us that there's an issue with how we're putting these together.
Yeah, we still have exactly. So
now we're in a green state. Now it renders again on my screen.
Yeah, good because we probably have the key. Do you have the console open because that should be big red flag in the console with a key?
Hang on, I think where's my terminal? Okay.
Front-end developer with no console open is strange for me, to be honest.
I had a error earlier, but we've recovered from it. Hang on.
Mohammed, just have a question. I want to explain that a little bit more in detail. So index must be the key. No, it doesn't. The point is that React thinks in the application. So as soon as React starts its application, it does have elements. And all the elements does have keys. So the keys are always there, but you can overwrite them. Sometimes it's even necessary to do that. The point is you need to be as distinct as possible, as precise as possible when it comes to the keys. Because if you just use index can be 0. If you use it in every component, you have duplicates of the key 0. And this can lead to severe re-rendering problems in your app, which are completely basically violating the least astonishing principle, because you don't know what happens. It's actually fade state of your app. The problem is it's still working.
Yeah, so Mohammed and Milos are challenging you on that to some degree. How would you, if this was an easy mistake to make, how would you create a unit test or some kind of test
the thing is,
or linter rule to prevent you from making this error?
The thing is, when you go, maybe it's true, maybe it's thing of the past. It was definitely discussion I read in the past. So maybe it's not the case. Then I excuse myself.
What Milos says makes sense to
me.
But
at least
it won't be memoized. It won't be globally memoized.
Yeah, but the point is there's another. Yeah, there's another aspect to it. Yeah, but then let me please explain. So if I shall explain that. The point is, and this is what I mentioned before. For example, if you have a user object and the user object is updating next time you render and you still have the same index inside there, it might collide on that point, because it might change the order of things rendered, and then the order is still indexed. And the point is, it is always so. It doesn't cost you anything than just some letters to make the key unique. And as long as you have those keys unique, you are on the safe side. Okay, so if that's true, that it's not global, and it was my mistake, sorry for that. But then you can shorten it, but still it should be unique in that case that you may, for example, then take a look at, so for example, IDs. For example, if you take a look and say you have a user object later, and the user object might have a user ID, which can be, for example, a UUID or some nano ID, something like that. So, and you pass it inside there. Yeah.
Mohammed mentions that we can use React's helper method for that, the hook to actually use ID for that. So rather than us deciding what unique means, we could create a new ID using use ID.
That was best. I remember that was best practice. We have that in our legacy project, but this leads to other problems, because the point is you want to define as much as possible the ordering. The point is React doesn't have a problem with sorting those things. It does only need to know which element was which beforehand. So this is the reason of the key. It's not actually the positioning. It is like
you don't want it to be random. You want it to be stable.
Stable, right? You don't want to be as stable as possible. And nano ID, UUID is random every time you render. So if you have the UUIDs in a static way before you render, then it's okay. This is what I meant. If we could add a ID to the mock, for example, and just edit there. This is possible. Notifications would have an ID.
I like that, because that seemed weird. It seems weird that we have a mock array, and then we're performing compute on top of the mock array. We could have added all of that to the mock itself, so that we just naively render the actual prop from the mock array, right? So that was my confusion, because you asked me to do business logic on top of something that we've extracted to hide the business logic.
Yeah.
But we are running out of time, so if you just sort of zoom out from this conversation, what did we learn today? What did we explore? I
learned that key is not global. Really, I was still believing that's the case.
Okay.
I even had that, because I remember, I know 3 years ago when functional React starting, I had a long night spending together with another React developer, fixing those problems. I say React developer, it was actually person we worked in React, and we had that exact problem, and we saw that components on different areas were re-rendering, and that was the reason why I was thinking about that globally. But maybe I'm wrong here. So Milos, thank you very much.
Milos does mention, Milos mentions, I agree, using index is not only against practice, it is a common source of unexpected behavior. You should never use it. And React actually warns you against it. So my issue is me being a sort of naive backend engineer who just comes into a front-end project to make changes. What would I need to have in my IDE to get all of these warnings, errors, linter messages, right?
The linter should do that. Or if the linter is correct setup, it will already tell you that index is not correct. And you should, especially when it comes to TypeScript, React, and all this kind of thing, you think you should be as strict as possible. Just let's say forbidding any is not enough in this case. So you need to follow some rules of React, some rules of NextJS.
So I'm very comfortable with TypeScript. So we are type safe. So I made sure with I made sure we did that. I'm actually also current with React. I'm just not current with the best practices of React because I don't code actively in I don't actively create or maintain React components. So for next time, I think it would make sense for whomever is driving, so coding, to actually have the browser side by side, because I benefited a lot when I saw that we refactored and the component disappeared on my render, because that influenced what I allowed it to navigate, right? I said I don't want to refactor right now, it broke on my screen, right? So we haven't solved that, right? You should. At Mac, it's quite cool. At Windows, you can do the same. It's like you're having this window management. You have your IDE full screen, the browser full screen, and then you switch. This is actually the best way. But the problem is, I also have the studio open, so I can see you, and I can't do that full screen with two windows. So that is my only problem, right? Because I'm also running the stream and I have the studio open. Yeah, I can do it next time, so no problem. So I have. We could also run a in-browser code editor, so we could swap from IntelliJ to VS Code and run one of those in-browser. I think GitHub has it as well, and then we can sort of have the compiler, the terminal, the editor, and the preview split screen on one browser tab. But I don't know how well that works regarding memory usage with. I would say it's a little bit too large for the stream, so we only have let's say a ratio of 90 to. It might be too tiny. Yeah, it might be too tiny. It's because in front end you need to have a console. It's basically a full screen at minimum. It would fit here if you just have a mobile app development thing. That's the one, CodePen. Yeah, you can use CodePen. Actually, we could, yeah. So maybe to get some feedback. So actually we haven't finished the component, but I think the idea behind is clear. It compiles. It compiles. Actually, we haven't done a lot of Tailwind now, and we can't see the result, which is a problem when we're going for Tailwind, to be honest. It's beautiful on my screen. Great, yeah. So let's ship your computer then, right? Good. So for the audience, so we had some new people today, which was quite cool. A lot of new faces, yes. And I wanted to ask you, was this helpful for you? Because we're actually doing that for you, so obviously. Was that helpful? Mohammed, Miles, Isabel, LinkedIn user Raul. Who said that, Raul, everyone here in the audience, have you taken something from it? Is it something worth continuing in the future, not being too theoretical, being more practical? Is that something for you? Would you like to see something like that again? Also, you got to see a little bit of pair programming dynamic. So you got to see sort of he's shouting at me, right? Boundary setting, yeah, because we encountered an issue where I got the sense that we're doing something wrong, and then I stopped you and asked you, hey, it seems wrong to me. Are you sure? Should we reassess this? Somebody in chat has a better suggestion. Should we refactor first or make it compile first? I know it's not correct, but I want to use my editor, right? So when somebody says select this and copy it over, I would naturally always resist that, because I would write it down first and then use my IDE to refactor it, because my IDE has a right-click refactor move, and it'll name the folder correctly. It will name the component correctly. It will export the component when it's not exported right now. And I don't want to type that. Even the AI doesn't know how to type that. But my IDE's refactoring tools, that's why I'm paying IntelliJ to have access to all of those.
I use IntelliJ, but I don't use Refactor somehow. So this is the personal difference, right? Then, right?
And if you've noticed, I also have a plugin, for example. Actually, I can still show it. I have a plugin. This is also one of my productivity tools, right? So when I do this, this and project, file browser, I misclicked. I got nervous during the stream and I misclicked something.
Nervous?
Yeah, I don't know what I did, but I hid my I hid my project. I moved it to the wrong end. Now the issue is, see I have this? Do you see notifications?
Yeah.
It's showing me that every time I click something, I click and something in my UI, it's telling me, hey dummy, this button you just manually used your finger to click as hotkey. This is the hotkey. Right, so the notification disappears.
You need to tell me how's the name of this plugin. This is actually I will get spammed, but
this is a huge productivity boost. And the point
can you
is that
maybe not make a secret out of that?
It's
just
Key
tell
Promoter X. It's called Key Promoter X.
Can you post it into the chat then in both chats? StreamYard and LinkedIn.
And this is an IntelliJ plugin. VS Code might have something similar. So I hope it went in.
Good. So Mohammed said, learned something, great. And we had Vladi saying
practicality.
Trumps theory most of the time. That's true. I think we should have a mix of that always. But yes, I totally get you. Francesco, hey, great to see you again. Tomorrow you have the next chance to see everything.
Tomorrow we're doing refactoring. So I'm sort of doing what you saw today. I was implicitly doing very safe refactorings that are safe to do without tests. And we're gonna, and that's what I call sort of guilt-free refactoring, where you can refactor even though it's not test covered because you're doing structural changes that are, in TypeScript are safe to do, right? So we're using a typing system, using IntelliJ, we're using the refactoring tools to actually safely refactor, even if we might be in an environment that is messy and has exports all over the place and might not be test covered to the degree that you're refactoring. Right, so that's what we're doing tomorrow. Tomorrow is all about sort of your time investment and sort of your productivity refactoring, sort of speeding yourself up.
LinkedIn user is right. Some new stuff, it was good, but sometimes too much spoken about stuff. What is not on the topic today, reducing the time topics. Yeah, it's true, actually. We mentioned that we actually wanted to do some React with Tailwind, and we ended up talking a lot about TypeScript refactoring.
A lot of React and very little about Tailwind.
Maybe next time when we say live coding, we make a 15-minute introduction and straight go into that one instead of nearly better. 1 hour of talking bullshit again. Right?
It's better. The first time was 1.5 hours of bullshit.
We're getting better, not talking too much.
We're getting better. The metrics are improving. So thank you. And thank you for calling us out on it.
It is totally fine that you next time join us and just tell us, go ahead coding. No?
Yeah.
Don't talk too much about that. Right? Okay, we have more comments. Refactoring without tests sounds interesting.
That's tomorrow. Yes.
That's actually that's.
It's inspired by our book club now reading Tidy First, and Tidy First is a huge chapter about the economics of refactoring, the decision making that goes into it. So that's tomorrow. Philip says yes, a lot of new names. Mustafa, Philip, hello, Grant. It's great that you could make it.
And we want to give out a hint. We are creating finally the Circ community right now. We have settled everything already. It will come out the next days, so maybe tomorrow already, where we're really inviting you to join our Tech Journey community to first of all know about when we stream, which is actually every Wednesday and Thursday. But what are the topics? Then you can keep in touch with us. You can stay in touch with the others because we are streaming on 4 platforms right now, and we're doing that two times a week. for the next year. You know, it's like there are a lot of opportunities to network, and we are mainly on LinkedIn, so you find us on LinkedIn, but especially you are supposed to network with each other as well, providing us feedback as a group or even join us, and therefore we create a community. So everyone who's consider himself as a regular on our show is very invited to join us in our community. Hopefully we will get out the link for invitation tomorrow, and then we are happy that you can join, and hopefully you do, because we really love to do those things. So TDD frontend feels like a big challenge. Yeah, it is. So we should do that on some point.
Yes. We should probably invite Nick. Nick
I thought to say that myself.
Nick loves TDD on frontend, especially React.
Is there any way to contribute to this repo? Yes. Yes, let me take a look. Go through.
Actually, the best way to contribute to the repo is to hot seat join the stream, and then you take over the keyboard. If you have IntelliJ, I have code with me, the plugin installed, so you can take over my machine if you want, and we can give you access to code live with us. If that's uncomfortable for you, it's okay. You don't need to be on the spot. But we don't have any contribution guidelines yet, because it isn't really an open source project. It's just a sample kata. But I have a feeling you would also like to check out the template that Adrian used, how the project is set up, maybe make some suggestions there. It's all very welcome. I think we can make the repo public and then sort of open it up for PRs at least. Okay, Francisco, thank you for being with us. And Mohammed, yes, is there a community to join Telegram or somewhere else? Yes, we are setting up a Circle SO community. We're just getting the nitty-gritty set up, and then we will share a link when we are ready.
You aren't invited to the project, so it must be public already.
I think you might have hidden it at some point, or maybe the person who tried it in GitHub.
I think it's an empty branch. This is the problem, maybe.
The default branch is empty. Yeah, the develop branch is where you actually.
It was supposed to not be like that, so sorry for that. So it is open.
But the default branch is set to the wrong branch because we haven't merged the main.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll fix it. I will post latest tomorrow. You get that one, maybe to this evening. So stay tuned. We will post it, and you can contribute and learn from that as well. Of course, if you have some questions, feel free to ask us. We're always happy to answer those. And you will find inside there the TDD stuff as well, all the refactoring sessions we do. Then you can see the changes of the refactorings we have done after the show as well, which is great value for you as well. When we do other things like, for example, PWA, this project is already prepared for being PWA, is the next PWA package. So you can use offline first. You can have service worker inside there. But we will add later on web workers will be a topic as well. So how, for example,
we need to split up a little bit of theory, a little bit of practical, a little bit of theory, a little bit of practical. Because the same thing that can happen today can happen.
We have an entire year in front of us. So I'm talking about the entire year, right? So there are so many cool web technologies like web workers. Most of the front-end developers never use those. You can pass an entire parsing of an Excel file in the browser into another thread without blocking re-rendering images and stuff like that.
Yeah, you can iterate greedily across a large CSV without blocking the renderer thread.
Right. And we will go through those things as well and hopefully learn together with you to use those things better. So this is the idea of that one. Good.
Okay. Happy to wrap up?
Yes. What?
Happy to wrap up. Is there anything else you wanted to share? How can we best find you, Adrian? If you wanted everything that you just embodied, the sort of the Tailwind React mentoring.
I saw that my LinkedIn is a little bit my link tree is a little bit outdated. So I start with my snackable CTO coaching thing. It's actually not a coaching thing, but it's part of the URL. I post it now quickly into the comments, and I show it. This is my blog. You will find me on my blog. I post there at least once a week. Videos and articles. Those articles are like today, what I've introduced today. It's about shedding some light on topics like Tailwind, React, understanding the professional opinions, when should we use those? So it's snackable CTO. So I'm 15 years or CTO now in the small to medium sized business size, and I made those decisions quite a lot, you know. And of course, I'm front end engineer myself for nearly 25 years now. And it's the mixture. So I have my biasness as an engineer, and I have my professional opinion as a leading person. And what I provide you there is the world, the best of both worlds, how you actually make decisions as a team, what went wrong, what went good. So I'm talking about where I actually failed and where I succeeded, and how we should differentiate. Tailwind is not Maslow's hammer. CSS is not Maslow's hammer, React isn't. There is no technology which is the best or jack of all trades. And this is what I'm talking about, and culture, of course, accepting those things as a team, working towards a tech stack as a team, solving all the cultural problems and stuff like that. If you are interested in that, take a look at my blog. I'm happy to have you as a subscriber there. All my content is most of the time free for some weeks before it comes paywalled. So if you like, stay tuned, and then you can have it for free for the time. So that's actually my person. So Dennis, what's about you? Who are you?
This is my stuff. So we had a question on that. Is it enough just to be a good coder and write clean code? Do you have any advice about soft skills? Yes. So most problems in software engineering are actually human problems, right? So most of the really nasty stuff, really important stuff will happen in important conversations, in important handoffs to a customer, receiving feedback from the customer, or being challenged, or pair programming like we did today, like actually learning with candor how to push back or set boundaries, or how to ask questions without appearing amateur. And most of, let's say, your well-being, of how you feel and how confident you are, does not come from your technical skills. Your technical skills become better once you become confident. The emotion comes first. So that would be my general advice to this. And if you struggle with this, if you struggle to sort of keep your cool while you're on a high stress, high stakes project, this is partly what I coach, and also help solopreneurs, and I coach entire teams on like how to manage well-being and craftsmanship skills at the same time. So if you're interested in that, if that sounds interesting to you, here's my link below, Crafting Tech Teams. That's my newsletter publication on Substack. Or if you just want to have a chat and build a relationship, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to take your questions. Happy to take it to DMs. You're very DM friendly. And yeah, thank you for being with us live. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Tomorrow, 4 p.m. CET, right?
Refactoring without tests. Stress-free, right? Guilt-free.
Do we have a guest tomorrow? Yes? Is it?
No,
we don't have a guest.
We have Daniel next week.
Okay. Do we do live coding tomorrow?
Yes.
Yes.
I prepare. We can use this code base if you want, but
please stay with one code base so people can participate. Okay. So we have a central spot. I will prepare it, and we make it sure that we only have one branch and everything is clear and better prepared than we do it right now. Sorry for that.
Right. I like that. Okay. So
good.
Thank you so much. Outro. Do you want to take the honors? And
I don't sing something now. If you want to sing something, you can do that.
Okay, everybody. See you tomorrow. We're going to leave you off with some lovely elevator music that you know all too well. And we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.
See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Ciao.